I know we do have.
You are a pretty strong group to rival out there. You're all ready for this 2 weeks. Oh, forgot my
That is true. You can take longer if you want, but then you gotta make it. He's got a really nice like beard. I'm jealous of it actually. Mine's, I don't know if you're in class. You're going on this down here. That's
So my husband,
wait. I'm waiting.
and then he starts, gets up to Steve's level, and he's like, I can't.
That just got back up. We'll figure it out. It's coming back. I just got back up.
So I'm gonna do the intro and then break right into my 3 minutes. All right, guys. So we're going to be acting as members of the National Coalition for Promoting Physical Activity. Now, this coalition right here, the mission is to unite the strengths of public, private, and industry efforts into collaborative partnerships that inspire and empower all Americans to lead more physically active lifestyles. They were formalized in 1996, and the main path for their missions is infrastructure improvement through the SDOT 2686 Complete Streets Act of 2008. So this act right here was implemented in urbanized environments mainly to promote more physical activity as far as walking, biking, and even transit. So they implemented more better roadways, better rail systems, and which promoted to people to walk to and from the rail systems. They also implemented better parks, green spaces, things of the sort. As far as the issue that we're talking about is a lack of physical activity in America. And so per the CDC, we saw the recommendations for adults are 150 minutes of moderate intensity, 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week, and for children, 60 minutes a day. As far as America getting that, obviously that wasn't happening. So the adults, you'll see they're 44% below the recommendations. And then children between the grades of 9th and 12th grade are actually 72.9% of them aren't getting that recommended daily exercise. And as far as the Complete Streets Act, just some statistics that are seen. Now, this is a kind of a nationwide policy that's being implemented more and more as it gains traction. It's almost like comparable to like cell phone usage when that started to gain traction, and then all of a sudden all these states and municipalities were hopping on board with outlawing cell phone usage. So what it's seeing as of now is 1,400 complete streets policies, individual policies around America. We're seeing 33 states, as well as Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., adopting these policies. Oregon was the first to adopt it in 1971. Boulder is actually one of the biggest players in this in the early 1990s. And what you can see there is they implemented 380 miles of bike facilities, things like like if you have ever been up in the area out in Boulder, they know a lot of them have it now, but those bikes that you can rent with your app on your cell phone, so they initiated some of that. They made a lot more bike paths, a lot more walking paths, paved shoulders, and then the transit networks I was talking about earlier. From 1990 to 2006, what they saw is fewer drove alone, more walked or biked, and then transit trips almost doubled within that time frame as well. Now I'm going to go into the whole coalition thing now. Hello, my name is Nicholas Tomlinson. I want to thank you for taking the time to allow me to speak here today. I'm a representative for the American Heart Association, a group of over 32,000 cardiovascular professionals. And we are one of the founding members of the NCPPA, the National Coalition for Promoting Physical Activity. I'm here today because of the lack of physical activity in America, in part due to safety, accessibility, and conditions of roadways, bike paths, walking paths, parks, and other ways to commute. American Heart Association is for Act S.2686, the Complete Streets Act of 2008, because of the evidence shown in decreasing chronic disease, especially cardiovascular heart disease and stroke, through physical activity. Now, Barbara B. Brown, she's a professor of family and consumer studies at the University of Utah. She wrote a research article. She's done a lot of research articles, but one focused on some specifics of implementing railways into this Complete Streets Act. Her research paper, Transit Use Physical Activity and Body Mass Index Changes, the objective measures associated with complete street light rail construction, highlighted the improvements of physical activity due to the Complete Streets Act of 2008. What she had the participants do is wear accelerometers and actually track how much more they were moving throughout the day. And they showed an improvement on their physical activity, which actually brought lower BMI by 1.18. And those who didn't ride the railways saw obviously a higher BMI. So much so that the individuals who decreased their BMI showed an 81% decrease in the likelihood of becoming obese. Now, this upward trend of physical activity was purely due to the ability of the participants to walk or ride their bikes to the transit station. There were more ways to bring the bikes along with them, such as bike racks on the railways and allowing them to bring the bikes actually in the railways, that they could actually bring their bikes with them and then ride their bikes once they exited the actual cars. This improvement in the neighborhoods would surely allow every person living in these cities to have healthier, safer, and more accessible options for commuting. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I ask that you vote yes on S.2686, Complete Streets Act of 2008.
Thank you.
All right. So, hello, my name is Zachary Beanie, and I am here to talk to you guys on behalf of the American Council on Exercise. Thank you for allowing me to speak on the S.2686 Clean Streets Act of 2008. As a leader of nonprofit institutions of physical exercise, our goal is to set the highest standard when it comes to making movement a mission. Movement is at the core of what it means to feel healthy, to feel alive, and to engage in the human experience. We believe every step, jump, or lap puts people on the path towards being more active and leading a more fulfilling life. In fact, it's so important that we've made it our mission to get people moving. Our goals are to be the leading nonprofit advocate as it pertains to achieving health through movement and other various lifestyle changes. We claim to accomplish this mission by providing as many willing and able health professionals with the education needed to positively impact others' lives and reduce disease caused by a sedentary lifestyle. By certifying public health professionals via NCAA accredited certification, we're providing continuing educational units and providing access to science-based health and fitness information. The American Council on Exercise is striving to take a proactive stance on public health by educating professionals is instrumental to preventing disease associated with living a stagnant lifestyle that allows the collaboration to exist between the healthcare industry, policymakers, and communities. This is why Brown states that riders of public transportation saw 4 to 8 more minutes of physical activity a week than people who did not take public transportation. Scott Gudetziewicz, the CEO of ACE, is also the president of the National Coalition Promoting Physical Activity. he represents the importance of the alliance between organizations when it comes to tackling issues surrounding sedentary lifestyles. And as a founding member of the National Physical Activity Plan Alliance, the American Council on Exercise has played a significant role in establishing a comprehensive initiative for the initiative of S2686, which is the Complete Streets Act of 2008. It is, with more individuals able to use their city streets to get outside, to walk or ride a bike, the American Council on Exercise mission is to get people moving is achieved. So adequate physical activity has the ability to reverse a variety of life-threatening conditions, which is why it's so important that you vote in favor of S2686, the Complete Streets Act. Thank you.
All right, my name is Steve Craig. I'm here representing or petitioning a yes vote for S2686. I'm representing Action for Healthy Kids. Their mission is every kid healthy, active, and ready to learn. Adolescents and young adults need to be educated about the importance of incorporating physical activity into their lives. The health of our youth and future generations depend on us putting into place legislation that will allow every member of the community to become physically active. This is especially important for our youth to instill proper exercise habits. CDC reports almost 50% of youth ages 12 to 21 do not exercise on a regular basis. 14% of those don't report no activity at all. In another study, the CDC reports that only 29.8% of high school students attend physical education classes daily. To ensure the success of Complete the Streets, we need a yes vote on S2686 to make communities more friendly for all. Thank you for your time.
There's our representative.
Yeah. And it started in order to have money to see Medicare. So it started there. And then is actually very slow.
Yeah.
And another reason why they did it is because older ones need revenue. Because everyone's coming in December and then they're like, well, you wait. Right. So they did this huge rate competition system. And it exploded. Overnight, I was everywhere. Buses. It's not bad. It's not bad. No, and then it's gone. So it's not. I just have a little personal. I grew up surfing beach all the time, so that's my. Just wonderful. I'm looking forward to being back on the East Coast for 4 seasons. And I hear you say anything. Oh. As soon as I sell my house. Did you go up there? So yeah, half my life from Denver, and the other half, DC was exceptional. It's funny because people that used to bring it up, you can tell who is in office according to how the traffic is in DC. Because you get all these people, all these staffers, and it's mostly
just want my mobile.
Faster, faster. Double bubble. Double bubble.
Yeah.
I'll put you.
Are you guys ready?
Sure.
All right. You have the floor.
All right, good evening. My name is Rod. That's Ian, this is Stephanie. We're here for the Coalition for Treatment Instead of Jail. Here instead of jail. The problem in the United States prison system is overpopulated. Non-violent drug offenders is one of the leading causes behind the overpopulation in the United States prison system.
Who perfected the Substance Abuse and Crime Prevention Act, also known as Proposition 36, will assist nonviolent drug offenders to receive the treatment they need to become productive members of society and avoid incarceration time. And in addition to, we have the prison population, I can save the California taxpayers an annual average cost of around $31,000 a cost to house one inmate.
Has been written. Many studies have been done on the benefits of privacy with crime. Multiple articles have been written on the benefits of treatment over alternatives such as incarceration. So the success of treatment has been highlighted in multiple media outlets and personal testimony of those who have received treatment for substance abuse.
What is special mean that 1998 Drug Court Partnership Act passed, which provided state general funds to 32 counties each year for the purpose of treatment for substance abuse. In 1999, shortly after that, a Comprehensive Drug Court Implementation Act passed, which expanded the state general funds to 53 counties for the purpose of treatment. As of 2006, there are now 203 drug courts in all 58 counties of California.
Possible solutions, like drug court, the Proposition 26 will mandate treatment for nonviolent drug offenders rather than leave to the discretion of the judge or prosecutor. And this will allow those convicted of a nonviolent drug offense the opportunity to receive treatment, and an increase in funding and expansion of its reach to those with violent past and current charges.
Okay, cool. So we're going to begin testimonies from the Drug Alliance policy. Good evening. My name is Robert Gabriel, and I'm here on behalf of the Drug Policy Alliance, the leading drug policy reform advocacy institute in the United States. Before I begin, I'd like to thank you for your time and for hearing what I have to say. Currently, the Substance Abuse Act and Crime Prevention Act helps those who are charged with a drug-related offense and have no prior history of violent offenses. At the DPA, we believe that drug policies are based on realistic statistics, ground science, compassion, and human rights, not fear and stigma. We ask that an increase in funding go towards treatment programs so that we can expand its reach to those who may have had violence in the past but are currently being charged with drug offense. Those that may oppose to this may say that offenders can get treatment in jail. That may work while in jail. However, statistics from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration show that over 465,000 people on parole are still using illicit drugs. Parole, which means that more than 465,000 people were released from serving time in prison and still needed help. Currently, jail time isn't helping those with addiction problems. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association clearly states that addiction is a complex, treatable disease of the brain, the key word being disease. If someone is sick, you should treat them, not punish them. In 2006, I returned home from Iraq with PTSD and a methamphetamine addiction. Upon my return, I found myself sentenced to jail for armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. After my release, I spent my time with run-ins with the police and jail until 2010, where I was finally convicted for 2 counts of fraud. These 2 counts of fraud led to a 5-year sentence, which I served in the California State Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. After my sentence, I was homeless. So prison time did not help me with my addiction. It also left me homeless and with nowhere to go. After a period of homelessness, I found a drug program where I could live in for 6 months. I gained clean time, got help with my addiction, found a job, and was able to get a place of my own. 6 months in treatment, and the treatment program did for me what almost a decade of going to jail could not. I stand before you now as a leader in my community, assisting in the fight against addiction and an advocate for veterans. I work every day and even attend college in pursuit of a bachelor's degree in public health. Let my story be an example of the possibilities of treatment. Don't let the $45 million dollars that the leading prison corporations spend on campaign donations and lobbyists influence you. Be the officials who serve the people, not the money-hungry prison owners. Enacting a change in the policy which will give programs more funding and allow drug offenders with violent past to utilize treatment over incarceration will save the state over $31,000 a year it spends on each housing and inmate. But most of all, it would put an end to the cycle of addiction because the community is not the problem, addiction is. And addiction can be treated. So vote yes on increasing the funds and the reach for the Substance Abuse Prevention Act. Thank you. And next we have.
So, yeah. Good evening, committee members. My name is Stephanie Isa, and I am an advocate for California Proposition 36 law, also known as the Substance and Crime Prevention Act. I want to take this opportunity to thank the committee members for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice, as I express my desire to further the mission of Proposition 36. Proposition 36 will enable offenders convicted of nonviolent drugs possession offenses to receive a probationary sentence in place of imprisonment through community-based drug intervention. According to a study of Proposition 36 in the University of California, Los Angeles, Prop 36 is effective in satisfying the treatment needs of the qualified individuals. In fact, nearly 3 out of 4 clients who entered the Prop 36 treatment made substantial progress and achieved positive outcomes after they received the program. However, due to the large disparity between incarceration and treatment cost, Prop 36 is in need of increased resources to continue to serve the community. To further the mission of Proposition 36, I am asking the policymakers and community members to support the appeal for increased funding for Proposition 36 projects, which will sufficiently cover the cost of treatment of the qualified individuals. According to the National Institute of Health, people with addiction have no control over their actions because the brain craves and seeks for drugs no matter what the cost, even at risk of losing jobs, damaging relationships, or hurting friends and families. An example of this is my eldest brother, Noel, who had a drug addiction for about 10 years. He started using drugs at the age of 17, which got worse as the years passed. He was in and out of jail, a confinement that did not even help overcome his addiction. It was until one day that the family decided to put him in a rehabilitation, and since then he never came back to using drugs. Noel is no longer a drug addict. He has been clean from addictive drugs for more than 10 years now. Today he has a beautiful wife and a son. He is a homeowner and is the top sales executive in his workplace. There is a special story behind every person. The National Institute of Drug Abuse reports that a person is likely to take drugs to feel good, to feel better, to do better, and to impress friends. The National Institute of Drugs also conveys that a significant contributing factor to this is either biological or environmental, or a combination of both. Indeed, drug abuse has a devastating effect on the brain. Jail is an expensive instrument. Proposition 36 can save lives and reduce the cost of the economic burden. Again, thank you for letting me speak to you.
Good evening, Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of the California State Assembly, and thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Ian Jang, and I'm here on behalf of a new path and a request for the California State Legislature to revisit the Substance Abuse and Crime Prevention Act, or better known as Proposition 36. As you are already well aware of, the new path's efforts and support was instrumental in passing of Proposition 36 in 2000, and today our coalition would like to advocate on removing or amending a certain clause within Proposition 36 itself in order to strengthen the purpose. As Prop 36 currently stands, nonviolent drug offenders who are caught cultivating marijuana plants, even for their own personal consumption, are not eligible to enter the Prop 36 treatment programs and is subject to incarceration. California became the first state to legalize medical marijuana in 1996 when Proposition 215 was passed, and this allowed prescription users to grow and cultivate a maximum of 6 plants for personal use. California then passed Proposition 64 in 2016, which legalized the recreational use of marijuana, and this act went into effect on January 1st, 2018. We at A New Path do not condone the use of marijuana and drug under the influence because that behavior is an endangerment to others besides the user.
However, due to recent changes in California about marijuana use, we wish to advocate that amending or removing the clause regarding personal cultivation would continue to support Proposition 36's mission of keeping nonviolent drug offenders out of jail, possibly offer this target population treatment and or education options, and ultimately reduce the amount of unnecessary expenditure towards California's prison system. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, our state's prison occupancy currently stands at just over 130%, with over 4,000 additional inmates being transferred and incarcerated in other states such as Arizona and Mississippi. The annual cost to California taxpayers has one inmate can exceed a total of $70,000 to include prison security expenditures and the inmates' health care, food and activities, and rehabilitation programs. Being a combat veteran with lingering PTSD issues, I obtained my own medical marijuana prescription when I discharged from the Navy, so that I wouldn't have to take the endless amounts of medications prescribed to me daily by the VA healthcare system. Not only does this license allow me to keep my PTSD issues at bay, but being allowed to cultivate my own plants allowed me to save money in the long run, and I always use medical marijuana responsibly. Never at work, never before driving, and never in any situation that would endanger the lives of citizens around me. Being allowed this opportunity taught me invaluable lessons in responsibility and moderation, and I currently no longer use, and I'm able to carry out my normal day with minimal issues. Especially with California's attitude towards marijuana these days, I strongly believe that this clause is not worth the pursuit of legal action, and the elimination of it would not only save money for our taxpayers, but also valuable time for law enforcement, legal, and administrative systems required to upkeep our state's prison system. Once again, I want to thank all the committee members for listening on behalf of my personal testimony and the new path advocacy and our united goals for the mission of Proposition 36.
Yeah, Mike. Are you the last? Pressure. Ready.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to comment on dietary guidelines for Americans, also known as the DGA. My name is Michael Reyes. I'm speaking on behalf of the American Diabetes Association, a nonprofit network of more than 1 million volunteers, 500,000 members, and a professional society of nearly 14,000 healthcare professionals and over 800 staff who share a belief in the dietary guidelines for Americans are not currently based on hard science, and that they need to be to reverse the diabetic epidemic we are suffering today. I stand here today supporting the Nutrition Coalition, along with partnering organizations, asking you to support the dietary guidelines for Americans reform. The issue is clear. The DGA has failed to safeguard the health of America. According to government data, our current obesity and diabetic epidemic began in 1980, the very year the DGA was launched. There are a number of possible explanations for this epidemic, but the one best supported by evidence is that the DGA has been based on weak, inconclusive disciplines and government's failure to comprehensively and systematically consider the best and most current science. The DGA gives false advice about how best to eat and prevent diabetes and other nutritional related diseases. The DGA is extremely influential and heavily lobbied. They form the basis of all federal nutrition policies, including the National School Lunch Program, which serves over 31 million children daily. The special supplemental program, WIC, for women, infant, and children, and SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. In 2015, 30.3 million Americans were affected by diabetes. The DGA provides food-based recommendations for people over 2 and older, including those at risk for chronic diseases. Its primary focus is promoting overall health and preventing rather than treating chronic diseases in the United States. 1.5 million Americans are diagnosed with diabetes every year. The low diet recommendations by the DGA told Americans to eat more carbohydrates, which we did, dramatically increasing the carbohydrate consumption by 30%, seen here on the left of this graph. According to a large and growing body of scientific literature, we know that carbohydrate restriction can reverse insulin resistance. That is at the root of obesity, diabetes, and other nutritional related diseases. Therefore, it is quite likely that the low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet recommended by the DGA, which was followed by for decades, did nothing to protect the public health and likely fuel the very chronic diseases that this policy was meant to prevent. This is just one example of how the DGA has made serious errors, ultimately damaging American health and severely affecting the U.S. economy. Statistics have shown in 2017 that the economic impact of the DGA affecting food buying decisions worth billions, if not trillions of dollars, and the health of Americans. They are heavily lobbied by large corporate and small nonprofit interests alike. $327 billion was spent on diagnosing diabetes. $237 billion were directed towards medical costs, and $90 billion was lost to reduce work productivity. There are solutions. By voting yes to reforming the dietary guidelines for Americans, you can redesign the process for establishing a trustworthy DGA. You can better practice for conductive, systematic reviews. You can use a stronger practical approach and scientific consistency for evaluating scientific evidence. You can adopt a universal change of views based on valid evidence, free of bias and conflict of interest. Thank you again for your time and allow me to speak for your yes vote and support in favor of reforming the dietary guidelines of Americans, for Americans.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Andrew, and I'm a representative from the Obesity Action Coalition. As a member of the Nutrition Coalition, I would like to thank the policymakers for this opportunity to speak about my support in the prevention of obesity for a healthier America. Obesity has an emotional, social, and psychological and physical consequences and is associated with early onset of chronic emotional, social, and physical consequences. The increasing rate of obesity is in need of a more comprehensive approach that focuses on policy and environmental changes that will help make Americans choose healthy choices the easy way. Obesity results from the improper balance between poor diet, resulting from eating too much as well as eating the wrong things. In 1977, the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition, known as the Dietary Goals for Americans, reported that the recommendation on what Americans should consume. The first guidelines were launched in 1980, which recommended to consume less fat, particularly saturated fat, less dietary cholesterol, and more grains, fruits, and vegetables. The Dietary Guidelines for Americans is the go-to source for nutrition advice, and it promised to empower people to make the right choices on what they can eat and the amount of what they can eat to stay healthy. But since 1980, adult obesity rates have doubled, and will increase another 50% by 2030. I stand before you today to ask for your support and ask you to vote yes for the policy change to reform the dietary guidelines for the Americans for several reasons, and I would like to mention a few. On September 14, 2017, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine reported that the process used to develop the dietary guidelines for Americans fell short of meeting the procedure for conducting systematic review and approach, and scientific evidence is lacking. Also, according to the Institute of Medicine Science Review, diet low in fat and high cereal and grain carbohydrates that the committee is recommending creates a metabolic profile that leads to disease. To improve the health of Americans, the committee needs to change its definition of what a healthy diet is. One thing I personally worry about as a mom are the children. By restricting the healthy animal fats, our growing children will miss out on the nutrients found most abundantly and more exclusively in animal fats, which are critical for their development. I think because we as parents are so caught up and affected by the dietary issues, it somehow affects our children by the way we choose the food we prepare for them at home and what is being prepared for them at school. There is the need to redesign the process for establishing the dietary guidelines for Americans because despite the guideline, obesity in America still reach crisis proportions because it continues to send mixed messages about what healthy food really is. The 2015 to 2020 dietary guideline is the current edition, and the 2020-2025 edition is underway. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and Health and Human Services has plans to consider the committee's scientific review as they develop the new guideline. It is time to rebuild it with solid science and real food because without more sensible recommendations, the trend to obesity will continue to accelerate. Again, thank you for this opportunity and I wish everyone good health.
Hello, my name is Ruth Milano. I am speaking on behalf of the Wheat Farmers Market Nutrition Program to ask you to vote yes on reforming the dietary guidelines for Americans Act. This program was established in 1992 by the Congress, which this program is associated with a special supplemental nutritional program available for women, infants, and children, as well as the Food and Nutrition Services. It is conducted by the federal state affiliation, which the Food and Nutrition Service are granted cash to the state agency. In addition, this program contributes to supplemental food, affordable healthcare referrals, as well as nutrition education free of charge to families who are within the low-income bracket, nursing mothers, and non-nursing postpartum women. In the last 40 years, childhood obesity has increased rapidly, which most data has shown that 17% of children ages 2 to 19 years are qualified to be obese. Yet further research by the public health should be considered on examining nutritional intake among children in the U.S. to strategize and identify potential targets to be used as interventions such as school lunches. I would like to ask the policymakers to reform the dietary guidelines for the Americans Act to meet the program standards needs to be consistent with the updated dietary guidelines for Americans for the Secretary to seek consideration with a fees to recommend nutritional standards. Current school nutritional standards, as well as it lacks wide range of materials that is designed to provide local meal planners to include recipes, also other tools to help prepare school meals more appealing for the students. Most importantly, having more parents to be more engaged in their kids' schools to address any concerns or suggestions that can help better the meals that are being served in their kids' schools. Therefore, policies should consider research to support healthy eating and timing. School meals should be persistent in order to consider evidence-based research that supports healthy eating. To conclude, we ask you to please vote yes on reforming the Dietary Guidelines for Americans Act. Again, thank you for your time.
Was that it? You guys were clean about it, huh? Yes. Excellent. Now, each group did a really, really great job. Thank you for coming. Happy holidays.
We're all getting ready.
I'm hoping for it.
I mean, you're the grader.
I haven't looked. Let's see what the consensus is. I think everyone's been doing pretty